So this week's Torah portion is called Tzaveh. Last week, Torah portion was Truma. We also discussed that we are in the month of joy. Mishenichnas Adar Marvin B'Simcha. For those of you who weren't here last week was Rosh Chodesh, the month of Adar, and this year it's a leap year. So we have double joy, double happiness. So I hope
yay. Yay.
So it's a good energy, and we could transform any negativity to positivity with this month of Adar. So let's do our best. Everybody's smiling, which is perfect. So if you recall, last week, Teruma began telling the Jewish people, Vasali mikdash v'shachanti b'seicha, make me a tabernacle. Remember, they're in the desert, right? They just got the Torah at Sinai. They're in the desert. They said, make me a tabernacle, God says to Moshe, and I will dwell within them. And I will dwell within them. So singular, make me a tabernacle, and I dwell within them. And if you recall, in previous classes, we discussed why is it plural? There was only one Mishkan. And when they came to Israel, there was one Beit HaMikdash at a time. So why does it say, make me a tabernacle, and I will dwell within them? And the answer, just to rehash, because it's important to put it in context, is that even when we don't have that physical tabernacle, the Beit HaMikdash, when we lived when the Jews were in Israel and Jerusalem, it was built, the first and the second. Each and every one of us is in essence a tabernacle. Each and every one of us is a dwelling place for God's presence, God's energy, God. So somebody says, where can I find God? In the synagogue? In the mall? You find God wherever you are. V'shachanti b'seicha means God resides within you. Besides that you have a piece of God, your soul, chelek elokami mal mamish, God resides within you. So if you look at yourself as a mini temple that God is residing within you, you look at yourself from a whole different perspective. If God is with me and I'm a reflection, how different my behavior, my appearance, my acts, my relationships are, because I'm a dwelling place for God's energy. So why do we need a tabernacle then, if each and every one of us is a mini tabernacle? Is because the beauty was that when they had the tabernacle in the desert and then the Beit HaMikdash, that God's presence was so revealed there. It was so revealed. It's not that God can't reside in each and every one of us and we should be content with that. But having a physical location, a physical place to bring offerings, to see all the miracles with the burning of the offerings on the altar and the incense and the whole fanfare, spiritual, holy fanfare, and I'm saying it in a positive way, it's a very special place. Just like we go to the wall, the Kotel in Jerusalem. Can't you pray in your backyard? Can't you build your own little wall? But the fact the wall was the remaining wall of the Beis HaMikdash, there's a certain holiness and energy. And you know what? Between you and me, we as human beings need a place to connect, need a place to go. It gives us energy. It gives us power. You're with other people praying there. You put your note in the wall. Yeah, we could imagine a wall. We can find other ways to connect to God. But sometimes we're human. We need a physical object. We're going to Jerusalem. We're going to the Beit HaMikdash. We're going to bring an offering. You have your goat, Mom? You have your cow, Dad? Joey, don't forget the incense. We need to bring it to the Kohen. Okay? Envision yourself in that reality. It's exciting, interesting. 3 times a year, the Jews who didn't live in Jerusalem would have a pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the holidays and bring offerings. There's excitement in the air. So that's why we had a physical tabernacle, a physical Beit HaMikdash, because human beings, we like to see, we like to feel, we like to touch, multiple intelligence. We're tactile individuals. So having a physical place where God's revealed presence is there is a beautiful thing. But now that we do have a backup plan. Don't worry, God is within you. God resides within you, so don't worry. Don't feel bereft till the third temple is built that you don't have where to go, you don't have where to be, you don't have a connection. You do. You just have to find it within yourself. That's the secret. You know, this famous rabbi, not a Lubavitcher, he was just a famous rabbi from another, I forgot, either Chicago, Boston, and he writes a letter to the Rebbe that he's going through some angst, questionable times in his life, you know, and he's struggling. So the Rebbe writes him back. His name was, I forgot his name, Rabbi Moshe Rosenfeld. Let's use a generic name. He says, the Rebbe writes him, consult with Moshe Rosenfeld. He looks at the answer. You're like, I'm Moshe Rosenfeld. I think the Rebbe didn't understand me. He writes again. The Rebbe writes him back, didn't I tell you to consult with Moshe Rosenfeld? And then he realizes what the Rebbe was telling him, you have the answers. It's within you. Sometimes the answers are within us. Sometimes you look here, you look there, and you fail to see it's in you. So this is the concept of the Mishkan. Now, in this week's Torah portion, it goes into greater details, not only how to build every vessel and the details, what kind of wood, what kind of nails, what kind of fabric, what kind of stitching. This week, it also tells us the garments of the high priests and the garment of the regular priests and how they had to be spotless and they had to be made exactly to the seamstress or tailor specs. If God said use wool and linen, you use wool and linen and argamon and all these very fancy fabrics. And it's interesting because last time we discussed how it's not permissible to mix wool and linen. If you like now, I just bought my grandson a suit last week for his bar mitzvah. I went suit shopping with him. And the man says to me in the suit store, it's 100% wool. I said, oh, if it's 100% wool, please leave it here for tailoring and shotness check. What's a shotness check? Shotness is a special rabbi comes around to all these stores and tailors in New York. There's many of them. And they do this check on the garment to check if there's any linen mixed in with the wool, because many times the European suits, mostly European suits, linen gets mixed in usually in the collar. And if it's mixed in, they remove it. They put this label on the sleeve, you know, they stamp a label, it's removable, and they tell you this is fine to wear, it doesn't have shotness. But yet in the temple, the priests' garments were made out of wool and linen. I discussed it quickly last time. I'll just say very quickly why they permit it. Because in the Beit HaMikdash, there's harmony. We discussed that wool symbolizes compassion, linen symbolizes severity, justice, and now the world is not in harmony. Compassion and justice are not working together, so to speak. We're off kilter. But in the Beit HaMikdash, there was that perfect harmony, perfect symmetry in God's presence. So they're able to wear wool and linen together. I don't want to go into it now because there's so many beautiful things I want to touch upon today. So just a little synopsis. So I want to talk about 3 topics today. 1, Moshe's name is not mentioned even one in this Torah portion, which is unheard of. Every Torah portion, Moshe, emes, Torah say emes, Moshe, everything is Moshe. Every sentence God tells Moshe, tell the Jews. Moshe did this and Moshe said that. And this Torah portion, it's as if he doesn't exist. His brother Aaron, who became the high priest, the first high priest, is mentioned continuously in this Torah portion because it talks about the garments of the high priest and the work of the high priest, the job. Very interesting tidbit I'm going to share in a minute. I think it's interesting. To me, it's interesting. I hope you'll enjoy it too. And Moshe's name is not mentioned. Why? What's going on here? Anybody have an insight? I'm going to read the first passage so you know. Va'ata Tzaveh, and you, obviously God is talking to Moshe, and you will command the children of Israel. And he tells them they should take clear olive oil. This will be for the menorah. And then you have the parochas, which is the covering of the ark, and all the stuff. And then he tells Moshe about his brother Aaron, how he's the high priest, and these are the garments. But yet, And the Torah portion is called Tzaveh, which means command. And it starts off where God tells Moshe, and you shall command. And we know by process of elimination, he's obviously talking about Moshe. Now, everybody, what do you think? How come Moshe's name is eliminated intentionally from this Torah portion?
Well, he's talking directly to Moshe. He's not saying, indirectly. So he doesn't have to use the name.
And God is telling him, and you go ahead, Jane.
Maybe you, meaning now you are people. It's not just you are the leader. Now you're coming together as a people.
Okay, very good. Very good. Diane, you want to offer anything?
I'm wrong.
It's not,
maybe he has to be so humble he can't have his name spoken. I don't know.
Very good. But and also, doesn't it say Moshe Anav Mikol Adam? Moses was known as the humblest of all men, even though he was so great. We discussed once before his greatness, because he was so great, he was so humble. Because just quickly, we're not going to go why. The greater you are, sometimes the more you see how ungreat you are, how much more you can achieve. His greatness was his humility. He said, wow, look at me, I'm nothing compared to God. As he was so great, he realized how he's really nothing compared to God. It's a very interesting insight. So there's a very interesting story that we're actually going to learn next week, because the Torah doesn't necessarily go in chronological order. And I'm sure you've heard this before, that many times the way we have it in the 5 books of Moses, stories don't always happen in the same order they were written for various reasons. Next week's Torah portion is going to talk about the sin of the golden calf. So remember what happens. God comes to Sinai and the Jews are on the mountain. We discussed this a few weeks ago, and they get the Torah and they hear the oral tradition and the written tradition and the 10 commandments. I am God, your God. Don't kill, don't steal. And then Moses tells the Jewish people, I'm going to go up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And he goes up for 40 days and 40 nights. And next week we'll tell the whole story. But what happens? He comes down. What does he see? Them worshiping a golden calf. He breaks the luchos, and we'll go into it next week. And God says, that's it. I just gave the Jewish people the Torah. They heard my voice. They saw the miracles. Now they chose a golden worship. It says, do not commit idolatry. Do not worship other gods. Golden calf. And next week we'll discuss why they made a golden calf after the giving of the Torah. It doesn't make sense. So, you know what Moshe, God says to Moshe? I'm fed up with these people. I'm going to wipe them out. One big wipe out. You will be left alive. You will have more children, and your children will have children, and that will be the new Jewish people who will follow my path. I don't need these sinners in my life, God says to Moshe. Moshe says, really, God? Let me read what he says. Moshe says, one second, erase me from the book which you wrote. I want to read it to you in Hebrew because it's Mechani na misifracha shekasafta. Oh, you're going to wipe out the people? Then take me out of the book. I want nothing to do with the book, the Torah. You're going to destroy the people, my people, our people? I don't want to have anything more to do with the book, the Torah. And that's why his name is not mentioned, because when a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, a prophet says something, it happens. He said, take me out of the book. So Parshas the Tzaveh
Took him out of the book.
his name is never mentioned because he said to God, take me out. God took him out. It shows the power of someone like Moshe, that when he speaks, God listens, in a sense. Take me out of the book. But you know what ends up happening? He prays for the Jewish people. They get forgiven. We know that because we're here today, right? But no, we could have been descendants of the next. So when Moshe speaks, God listens. Moshe says to God, yeah, you're going to destroy the people. Take me out of the book. I don't want my name mentioned in your Torah. And that's why it says Va'ata, doesn't say Moshe's name, not even once in the whole Torah portion, to show us the power of Moshe's words. And he saves his people. He saves the Jewish people, which also talks about leadership, which again, I don't want to make it the topic today. What's a leader? A leader is how I am for the people. They are my people. If they are not going to be around, I don't want to be around. That's why he doesn't go into the land of Israel, because ultimately that whole generation died in the desert because of the sin of the golden calf, and the next generation went in. And when the next generation went into Israel, Moshe is buried in the desert with his people. A leader stays with his people. Everyone says Moshe didn't go to Israel because he hit the rock and didn't talk to it. He was punished. But Chassidus takes it much deeper, that Moshe stays with his people. His people don't end up entering the Holy Land of Israel. They die out in the desert. The next generation goes in with Joshua, his successor, and he is buried in the desert. We don't know where it was hidden. Another discussion, because a leader stays with his people. Moshe's people were there. He stays with them. Imagine, Moshe did everything to take his people out, but he remains with the boat, the ship. The captain remains with his ship. So Moshe says, you're going to destroy them? Take me out. I don't want to have my name in the Torah. Don't associate me with the Torah anymore. Because why did you give a Torah, God? For the people. There's no people, we don't need a Torah. The Torah connects God to the Jewish people. No people, we don't need a Torah. God's wisdom, the Torah connects God to the people. No people, no Torah. Take me out of it. And God listens, takes them out. And why is Aaron? This is interesting now. We're going to move on. So anybody want to ask anything? Any questions, concerns?
I just remarked that even that early in our history, you can question God. You can't just take an order without question. It's very interesting how it manifests through all the generations. Question authority.
You know, that's a discussion. And do you mind if we table it for next week when we talk about the sin of the golden calf? Because I think then we'll get a deeper understanding of why actually can,
Okay.
4 questions. One, the guy in the desert island, why did you build 2 shuls? One I go to, one I'll never walk into. Why do Jews always answer a question with a question? Good morning, Liz. Good morning. Welcome. Why do Jews always answer a question with a question? Why not? So we Jews, we're interesting. We're interesting people. We're an interesting people. So when Moshe comes down, by the way, with the second, when Moshe comes down with the second luchos, the Torah says his face was aglow. Why was it aglow? Because the Talmud and the commentaries explain the leftover ink from writing the Torah scrolls, because remember, Moshe was the first one to write out the Torah scrolls. God gave him an ink and a pen and said, write, and I'll tell you what to write. And he even writes about his own. Some of the commentaries say he wrote about his own demise, and some of the commentaries said, no, Joshua finished it up. But anyway, so there was leftover ink in the pen, and the Talmud says that what happened was, and the commentaries say that, sometimes you're writing and you put your hand on your forehead and the ink, I was once in the supermarket and the lady said, there's something all over your face. It was ink. I was writing. The ink went onto his face, and the ink was a very special ink, so it created a glow. So he looked like he was glowing, and also the holiness of God was descended upon him when he was writing the Torah. So why was there leftover ink? This is the point I want to make. God is so exact, every iota, every inch, every quarter millisecond, everything is accounted for by God. So why was there leftover ink? God usually would give him exact amount of ink to write the Torah. The answer is because his name was originally supposed to be in this Torah portion. Uses more ink. His name wasn't written, leftover ink. Interesting insight. Leftover ink, it spilled on his face and it glowed. So that shows another interesting insight how the whole thing unfolds with us. So it just, whenever I read about Moshe, I get so, I don't know, I get a little choked up because I look at him like the Rebbe of the generation, like we looked at the Lubavitcher Rebbe, our Rebbe. I look at Moshe like he was a Rebbe of the generation. And it's sometimes a little heartbreaking, how he has to fight and fight and fight. And it's so beautiful, but it's also so emotional. I don't know. For me, I get a little emotional when I read these stories about Moshe, how he said, "Take me out of the book." So it's a very interesting. So Ata Tzaveh, and then there's one more little insight I just thought of. I want to share. God says, "You command the people. How to make the tabernacle and the garments." When it comes to this point, God doesn't even have to say Moshe's name. You, everyone knows who you is. Because when a person reaches such great heights like Moshe, you don't even need to say his name. The you is enough for us to know, it's Moshe. Moshe reached a level, a pinnacle of leadership and connectiveness to godliness that he was one with the people in the Torah, and all one. Bound together. There was no distinction between him and the people, him and the Torah, him and God, all connected in every which way. So there's no reason you have a class of 50 students and you want to call upon one. You go, Phil, answer the question. Joey, pass in your homework. You pass me the homework. Who? Which you? But when you have a Moshe, God doesn't have to say Moshe. Ata Tzaveh. You tell the people, who's you? Mrs. Balshazzar? No. Freida? Absolutely not. Everyone knows it's Moshe because Moshe at that point in his life was one with God, one with Torah, one with the Jewish people. So another way of looking at it that, yes, he's not mentioned. Moshe is not mentioned Moshe, but Moshe is the Torah. You read it, passages. Will you forget about Moshe's presence in this Torah portion just because it doesn't say his name? You tell the people. You tell them this. You say that. You do this. We know who you is in a sense. So Moshe reaches a point, though, yes, his name is taken out. It's not spelled out. There's no D-I-A-N-E. There's no Diane. There's no Moses, M-O-S-E-S, M-M Shin Hey. But Moshe's presence, energy is felt every minute in this Torah portion and all Torah portions. It's Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziveh Lanu. Moshe, we'll sing that song to our children and ourselves. Morasha Kehilas Yaakov, Torah, Tziveh Lanu. Moshe, okay. So Moshe's presence is felt every minute, every second, every page. It's like the author, in a sense, not the author, God is the author, but the scribe of the Torah is Moshe, and the teacher of the Torah is Moshe. And that's Moshe. And there's a very beautiful song from Eighth Day, which is a Jewish rock band led by my nephew, Ben C. Marcus, and he has a gorgeous song, and it says, we all got a little bit of Moses in us. Each one of us has a piece of Moshe in us because he was such a pivotal leader. Just like we descend from the matriarchs and the patriarchs, the Torah tells us we all have a piece of Moses within us. What does this mean? That we all are Moseses in a way. And how do we see it? Remember the story of Haman and Purim? Right? He decides to kill the Jews, eradicate them. Hitler. Before Hitler, Yamach Shemai, we had a Haman. And what day of the month does he choose? Anybody remember? What day of the month? He makes lots. Purim means lot. And he chooses the 7th day of the month of Adar. Why? Why does he choose that day? Because Moses died on the 7th day of Adar. So he says it's an unlucky day. It's an unlucky day, perfect day to exterminate the Jewish people. So the basic commentary said, yeah, but he didn't realize that Moses was also born on the 7th day of Adar. Moses was born on the exact same day, 128 years later, 120, I'll look it up, years later. So really, it was also a lucky day. He was born. So Chassidus asks a question, what do you mean he didn't know Moses was born on that day? If he looked it up in the books that Moses died on the day, you don't think he could look up in the same Talmud that Moses was born on that day? Haman was a smart man. What he didn't realize that Moses was reborn that day through the Jewish people. When Moses passes away on the 7th day of Adar, he's not gone. He's gone maybe physically, but he's reborn in the next generation who take his teachings, take his leadership, and continue his life. So what Haman didn't realize was it was really a very lucky day, because through Moshe passes away physically, but spiritually he lives on. That's what Haman didn't realize. That just because he chose Zayin Adar doesn't mean it was the end. It was the beginning of Moses' life, because when the Jews go into Israel, that's when they begin living the Torah, really living the Torah in the Beit HaMikdash and so on and so forth. So everybody have a little bit of perspective now about Moshe. Any questions, insights, comments, complaints? You sure this is a Jewish class? No complaints? No opinions?
No opinion.
So now the Torah portion continues, and we're talking about that Aaron now seems to come to the forefront because he's appointed as high priest. He's the Kohen Gadol. So Moses is the king of Israel in a sense, if you want to look at the hierarchy, and Aaron is the high priest. And it's a very interesting commentary that shares that when God meets Moses, remember he's in Midian and he sees the burning bush, and God says to Moses, take off your shoes. You are going to take the Israelites and Jews out of Egypt. Remember that story, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
So Moses says to God, no, I don't want to be the leader of the Jewish people. I don't want to be the leader of the Jewish people. I don't speak clearly. I have no leadership qualities. And he says, God, send someone else to do it. What about my brother Aaron? I know he can speak well. I know he's much better than me. He's older than me. Let him be the leader. So God says to Moshe, no, you're going to be the leader. But the commentaries explain that, again, whatever a tzaddik, a righteous leader, a prophet says, God listens. So Moshe says, let my brother do it. God said, okay, he is going to do it. You were supposed to be the high priest of Israel. Now I'm going to make your brother the high priest. You said let your brother do it. Your brother will do it. So Aaron becomes the high priest, and we see it in this week's Torah portion. But I want to point out something magnificent. That when you look at it, the relationship between Moshe and Aaron, Moses and his older brother, was impeccable. Not for a single moment was Aaron ever jealous of his brother Moses, and I'll show you how we know. And not even for a single moment was Moses ever jealous of Aaron, that he's the high priest and has all this regality and you know, because the high priest will soon see the garments were like something beyond gorgeous. And it was a very exalted position. Not 1 second do we have the brothers have any strife or discontent or inner jealousy. Because remember, God knows what's in everybody's heart. If there's any jealousy in the heart, God would have known. And that's why Aaron can be high priest, because he doesn't have an iota of negativity in his heart, and especially not for his brother. Now, if you look in the history of brotherhood in the Torah, it's not so happy. First Genesis, Cain kills Abel. He's jealous of his younger brother. Remember the story? His younger brother's offering is taken, the fire from God, and his is not. He kills his brother. Very sad story, very horrible story. Fast forward, you have Esau and Jacob. Esau wants to kill his brother. He took my birthright. They're reconciled at the end. There's a happy ending to that brotherhood. Then you fast forward, Joseph and his brothers, they sell him into slavery. What happens at the end? Also, there's a reconciliation. Oh, I forgot to mention, Isaac and Ishmael also are at odds. But at Abraham's funeral, it says they were reconciled. Isaac calls Ishmael to participate in the funeral processions, the funeral ceremony. And now we have another set of brothers. But yet, these two brothers, there is not one iota of strife, conflict, jealousy. They work seamlessly together. Remember, God says to Moses, go with your brother Aaron to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. It was a partnership. They did everything together. It was a partnership. And there's a beautiful line I want to read to you. When Moses has to go back to Egypt to tell Pharaoh, let my people go, God says to him, Aaron is already on his way to meet you, and his heart will be glad to see you. God is telling Moshe, he will be glad, his heart is glad to see you. Aaron knows that Moshe is coming to be the leader, and his heart is glad to see you. So the Torah indicates the beautiful relationship. And throughout the Torah portion, just want to share one or two little things. That when God tells Moses and Aaron to go to Pharaoh, he writes, he was Moses and Aaron. He, singular, because they were a team. They were a team. And now, coming to this Torah portion, one more little tidbit. That when God tells Moses, your brother the high priest will have the breastplate, the beautiful breastplate we're going to talk about in a minute. He says, his heart will be glad when he sees you. Let the heart that rejoiced in the greatness of his brother be vested with or bitumim. What God is telling Moses is that the same brother who was so happy that you are the leader of the Jewish people, that is the brother that can be the high priest. Only a person that has no negativity, personality of jealousy, resentment, inner resentment. We're talking about inner, subconscious resentment. Sometimes subconsciously you have resentment and jealousy. You can't express it. You may not even know it. But God says the one who has only happiness and his heart for you, that's the one who's going to be the high priest. Now you know why Aaron becomes the high priest. And Moses, of course, is not resentful either. The Torah wants to point that out. That in Moses wasn't like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have said that at the burning bush. Now I would be the high priest. And that is what the Torah wants to emphasize, the love and the partnership of the brothers, which is for us and our families. There's always a little tension. One of my own little personal mottos is never tell one child about another child because, they get a little jealous. Sometimes you have 11 children, you say, oh, did you taste her pizza that she makes? Oh, no one makes a pizza. You have to be careful with kids because they, oh, mommy loves her more. Mommy loves him more. And of course, never talk negative about one child to another child. Ugh, she never calls me before Shabbos. She never remembers when I ask her to do something. Because later on, there's resentment. And also kids say, oh, if she's talking about me, she'll be talking about you. So you have to be careful. And so here the Torah highlights the unbelievable relationship between Moshe and Aaron. Unbelievable relationship. So now I want to come to a very interesting insight about the clothing of the priests. And remember the short story by O. Henry? Anybody remember the short story of O. Henry? There's two thieves and they plot to rob a mansion. So what's their plot? One will break into the house. One will get dressed like the policeman and guard the street. No one will suspect the theft because there's a policeman right there. So the second thief gets dressed up like a policeman with the belt and the suit and the hat and the whistle like in the olden days, and he's patrolling in front of the mansion. The second thief breaks into the mansion. Oh, does he have a loot? He robs that place. Amazing. He has really made a killing. comes out of the mansion. He whispers to his friend, the policeman, okay, let's go. Time to go. We're done here. And the friend takes his whistle and starts blowing, thief, thief, thief. And he arrests him. He puts him on handcuffs and he arrests him. This is the story. And the story is clothes make the man. That when we, in high school, we read the short story, and I loved it. I loved all O. Henry and Guy de Maupassant, the necklace. I loved all these short stories. Remember Miss Brill, the short story of the lady with the fur? Okay, another time, another Torah class. One literature per Torah class. So at the lottery, the crazy story, the lottery. So the clothes make the man. Because now when you're going to read about the clothing of the priests, you wonder, why is there so much emphasis on the garments, the thread count, and the color of the fabric? And they were purple and blue. By the way, gorgeous, gorgeous. When people saw the priests and the high priests, it was like, it added to the aura of the holiness and godliness of the atmosphere and the atmosphere. And I want to now share my screen. I want to show you the outfit that the high priest wore. Of course, it's not exactly, it's a depiction, but I feel you'll get a little bit of an impression, and we'll go over the garments, and then we're going to discuss what was the significance of these garments. Can everybody see it on the screen? No?
It just says that you started screen sharing. Oh, there it is.
Okay, you see it? Okay. So this is the clothing of the high priest. Now, the high priest had 8 garments. The regular priests only had 4 garments. Okay, so let's go over the garments. I'll show you what they are. And I'm going to point so you say, so we start off with the hat. You see the hat, the white hat? Okay. Under the hat, it says Kodesh. You see it? That's the head plate. It's called, like the forehead plate. Like how do you call it when you wear a forehead thing? Headband. Okay? Remember, this is the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Now, look at these breastplate. You see it? It has how many stones? Who knows?
12.
For what? Why 12?
The 12 tribes?
Exactly. Each one was a very precious stone. Now look at the straps. The straps, look at the shoulder straps. Do you notice a little stone on each side of the shoulder straps? Those were onyx. And on each one of these onyx, 6 names of the tribes were inscribed. So on the right side, 6 tribes engraved in the onyx. On the left side, 6 names engraved in the onyx. Okay, now, what is holding the breastplate? Look at the back. You see the straps now, the back of the Kohen? The breastplate was attached in the back to what we call the apron. Here's the apron. Look at the apron in the front. See how it's tied to the front of the apron with these strings? So the breastplate was dependent on the apron. No apron, the breastplate had nothing to be attached to in this, the way God made the garments. And you'll see why it's so important that I'm pointing it out. So everybody see that now? Clear? Yes? Okay. So now we're moving up. So you see, this is the apron. The apron was interesting. In the back, the apron went all the way down to the floor. You see it? In the front, it had an opening. Unlike our aprons, we cover the front and the back were exposed, right? When you buy an apron I just got a gorgeous apron in anthropology, beautiful for cooking. I love wearing aprons because then I can wear my clothes. Now you see also, so you see how the apron went? Now you see the Kohen was barefoot. They never wore shoes or socks in the temple. It was a holy area. No shoes or socks. Okay, so now we have the breastplate. Then they have the coat. See the white coat? See it? White coat. The apron we just did. The breastplate, the forehead plate, and the tunic. This blue thing is called the tunic. So over the coat was a tunic. And then you have the belt with the little bow. You see the belt? That's called a gartel, a belt. If you notice, my husband and Hasidic Jews wear this fringed black belt when they pray. Why? It separates the upper body and the lower body. When you're praying to God, you want to have elevated thoughts, not lower body thoughts, so to speak, upper body thoughts, connected to divine and not the lower body, symbolic of the less impure thoughts, perhaps. So that's why people wear a gartel, and the Kohen Gadol wore this thing called a belt, and Avnei a gartel. 8 clothing, okay? So we have the hat, the pants, the tunic, the belt, the coat, the apron, the breastplate, and the forehead plate. And you see the apron went all the way down to the ground, almost on top of the tunic. And look at the bottom of the tunic. This is very significant. What do you see on the bottom, on the hem?
It looks like
Bells. Bell?
Bells. And in between the bells,
a lantern?
yeah, like pomegranates.
Oh, pomegranate.
Some commentaries say there was an apple, a bell, and most of the commentaries agree it was a pomegranate bell. Now, when the Kohen Gadol walked, the bells, remember, only the high priest had the bells, not the rest of the Kohanim. They did not have bells. Only the Kohen Gadol had bells. Does anybody know why the Kohen Gadol had bells? Can anybody think? Why do you think
Well, when he walked, you hear him, so it was significant.
when you walk, you hear him? Okay, why do we need to hear him?
Man, are those real bells or just embroidered bells?
No, real bells.
But the pomegranate can't be real pomegranates, so,
Right, they were made out of wool.
yeah, okay.
So when the Kohen Gadol walked, the high priest walked, the bells jingled, and the pomegranate, the wool, was near each bell. So 72 bells, and then a pomegranate bell. So everybody see all these pictures. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. So take one more look at this. See, very important that the apron is attached to the choshen, to the breastplate. So 2 questions. One, why do we need the onyx stones to have engraved on them? These are the apron straps. Why do the apron straps need onyx with the 12 tribes if you have the 12 tribes on the stones on the front plate? Why double? Why doubly, why redundant? And remember, this is precise instructions from God. And the second question, the Torah tells us, and it's one of the prohibitions in the Torah. In other words, it's called one of the loisase, negative mitzvahs, things you're not allowed to do. You're never allowed to separate the breastplate from the apron. If the kohen separates the breastplate from the apron, it's a sin. So one of the mitzvahs in the Torah is, the Rambam Maimonides expounds on this, you may not separate the breastplate from the apron. They must always permanently be connected, tightly connected. If it moves, it's not right. He can't go into the temple, the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash. It must be firmly, precisely attached to the apron. Now, this is a very significant point, and it's a mitzvah in the Torah. We have the negative commandments: don't kill, don't steal, don't disconnect the apron from the breastplate and the breastplate from the apron. So if the Kohen Gadol is hot one day, or his wife says, I forgot to wash the apron, it's in the cleaners. Okay, little humor. Okay, he can't go into the temple. He must always be firmly attached. And if the breastplate moves a little bit to the right, he can't go in. Move a little bit to the left, it's shaky. The car ride to the Beit HaMikdash is a little shaky. In his Tesla, he can't go in. And this is a very, very important point. Let me stop sharing now so we could see each other. Or maybe you like looking at the Kohen more than me. Okay. So there's 2 very, very brilliant insights. I hope we can cover both. The concept that the apron is permanently connected to the choshen is that the choshen, the breastplate, symbolizes our divine spiritual connection to God, the holy, the supranatural part of our lives. And the apron symbolizes human life as we have it. People who are us, you and me, Sometimes we do the right thing, sometimes we do the wrong thing, sometimes we're in darkness, sometimes in light, sometimes we're connected, sometimes we're disconnected. So the apron, which is symbolic of the lower body, again, the lower body, mundane human life, human beings, and our fallacies, must always be permanently connected to the breastplate, which symbolizes godliness, elevation, holiness, connectiveness, divine service. Sometimes you might say, listen, I can never be a holy roller. You're the holy roller, leave it to the rabbis, leave it to the rebbitzins, leave it to the prophets, leave it to the Torah scholars. They're the holy people. I'm a regular gal, I'm a regular guy. What do I have to do with that? And what does that have to do with me? God is saying the apron, which symbolizes human life, mundane things, must permanently be connected to the Choshen. There's no such a thing as the apron is one item, the breastplate is another item. It's never, the twain shall never meet. We must always be connected, the lower and the upper. We must always be connected to our divine soul. We can never, never tear it apart. You are not permitted to tear apart. The Kohen Gadol, Habis can never say, well, I'm going to only wear the breastplate today. We'll leave the apron for another time. I'm having a holy moment. Your holy moment is that it must always be together. The Jewish people are always one. It doesn't matter if you're the holy, the prophet, and he's the simple or she's the simple. It's always one people. That's why the stones on the apron, the tribes are not only present in the Choshen, in the moment of divine revelation. You and I, part of the 12 tribes, we are present in the most mundane moments in our lives and in the most holy moments in our lives. And as a matter of fact, it is the dark moments in our lives, the apron moments in our lives, in a sense, that bring us to the holy moments in our lives. That's our purpose, that's our mission. I'll tell you a story. This story you all know. It's about the woman with the cracked pot. Remember the story, famous parable? There's an old woman. Every day she goes to the well to collect water, and she has 2 buckets, 2 pots. One is cracked and one is whole. And she has a pole on her shoulders, you know the famous picture. And she walks down the path to the river, fills up the 2 pots, goes back to her house. On this long trek, one pot that's cracked, there's no water left when she comes back to her little cabin. The other pot is full of water, and she uses it for what she needs. And the 2 buckets bemoan their fate. The cracked one says to the whole one, oh, you're so lucky. You're always full, and you fulfilled your purpose. Me, it's a waste of time. She fills me, and then what happens? I'm cracked. I don't fulfill my purpose. I come to the cabin, I'm empty. What's the point? Why do I even exist? So the woman says to the cracked pot, I'll show you. She fills up the 2 pots, and she begins her walk. And along the whole path from the river to her cabin is a row of gorgeous flowers. She says to the cracked pot, you didn't think you have a purpose? Every day I fill you because as I walk, you water these plants, and then they grow, and you give me beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful flowers. So you do have a purpose. So the apron is the cracked pot. You wonder, why am I here? I'm not divine, I'm not holy, I'm not special, I'm cracked, I'm challenged.
Yeah.
You know, yesterday I kept kosher 100%. Today I gave a little sneak. Last week I kept Shabbos. This week, I did a little. Last week I was so charitable. This week, I don't know, my mean streak came out. But you know what? That's you. And God knows we are all these little cracked pots. But remember, we are connected to the breastplate. And it's a mitzvah never to detach the two. Because if you detached and say the apron is less important than the breastplate, then you have misrepresented why you are on earth. The breastplate and the apron remain together forever. And that's why the Rambam says it's a mitzvah loisa saying it's a sin for the Kohen Gadol to ever disconnect the two. Not only not disconnect, wear it crookedly or wear it not properly. So next time, when maybe you wake up in the morning, you think, I'm not such a great person anymore. No, no, no. You are. You know why? You're connected to the Choshen. You're always connected to the Choshen. And those people who think I'm the divine, sir, you're always connected to the apron. Remember, you are God's creation. Maybe those people are really aprons because they think there's something more special than the other people, you know? So this is the story of the apron. And one more beautiful thing about the bells. Can we just, yeah, we have 10 more minutes. We'll talk quickly about the bells. Hemingway, do you need to ask who the bell, for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for?
Thee.
Never ask for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Ernest Hemingway, I think he got it from the Torah, and I'll tell you why. Okay, before I move on, anybody here have a story, insight, and want to share something? Don't be shy, girls.
I like the way symbols have so much meaning behind them. You know, the tangible items represent spiritual thoughts or mitzvahs.
Exactly, by the way. That's why it says machshava, thought, dibur, speech, maisa, action are the garments of the soul. How does the godly soul within us express itself? Through us, through thought, speech, dibur, machshava, maisa, and action. So the garments of the Kohen, and I don't have time today, really represent actions. We'll talk about that maybe next week. We could catch up. But I want to share something beautiful that I love, similar to the apron idea that I loved. Why the bells? 72 bells. Come on, ladies. That's a lot of bells. You know, my ring is too much of a bell for me. You know, my ring on the front door? So, why so many bells? Why so many bells? Who can think? What's that? So I'll give you sorry, someone was at my door. So I'll give you the literal commentaries, and then I'm going to give you, of course, the mystical insight. So the commentaries say very simply, when the Kohen Gadol walked into the temple and was coming, everybody knew he was coming. Fanfare. It created excitement. It created, excitement. And you know what? Human beings need excitement. We need, when you gift wrap a gift with a big bow, aren't you more appreciative than someone just hands it to you in a ripped bag? Unless it's $1 million lottery, then you don't care how you got it, right? So fanfare. The Kohen Gadol represented one of the holiest people of the Jewish nation. So of course, when he walks in, it's respectful. It's like the king has a crown and a cape. Think of the changing of the guards at Windsor Palace, and all that stuff. Okay, I'm looking at the commentaries. So it creates excitement. But more importantly, the commentaries say that when you visit somebody, you ring the bell, you knock on the door. You don't go, when you go like to the Rebbe's resting place, if you went with me, you notice it's encased in like an outdoor house. You knock on the door. Someone said, why are you knocking? Because you ask permission to enter the resting place of a holy person. When the Kohen Gadol was about to enter into the tabernacle and later into the Beit HaMikdash, which is the holy temple, the bells he's ringing the bells of the temple. God, can I come into your place now? So the bells was like why we have a doorbell. Ding-a-ling, can I come in? Before you go into God's house, you ring the bell. You don't just walk in. Hi, God, I'm here. So the high priest, it was a matter of decorum. So there used to be a story in the Talmud. There was a great sage, and he would visit his best friend, Rabbi Hanina. He would start talking in a loud voice. So Rabbi Hanina wouldn't be saying like, oh, I didn't know you were coming. So it's menschlichkeit, a matter of courtesy to announce yourself before you come to someone's house. I have to tell you this crazy story. Don't hold it against me. I'm cooking for Shabbos. My kitchen looks like a hurricane tsunami came in. I'm dressed. I'm always dressed. I get up in the morning, I get dressed. But I wasn't wearing my sheitel. I was wearing my, my hair card. and maybe it was a little slanted to the right, because as I'm stirring and I'm like cooking for this huge Shabbos, and I turn around and I literally bump into a guy. A guy came looking for my husband, said my door was unlocked, and and my kitchen is tiny, and next thing I know, I bumped into somebody, a stranger in my kitchen. I don't know why he didn't scream. So he says, "Oh, Rebbitzin, I'm looking for your husband." So without missing a beat, I go, "Okay, he's in the synagogue." But like, this is what I'm talking about. Maybe open my door and wait in the front hall. But I was so I can't. And me, I'm a very outgoing person. People come into my house day and night. I don't care. I open the door. But okay, just a funny story. So now you can understand common courtesy. So the Kohen Gadol's bells rang, and he entered into the temple. Another reason is, if God forbid he did something wrong, he would die instantly, as we'll soon see the story of Aaron's sons next week. And then they would know that he died because the bells would stop ringing. Because 72 bells, the minute the priest turned around, bent down, stood up, ding-a-ling-a-ling. And the reason they were so many bells is to show us that every movement in our lives has a spiritual effect. Everything we do, there's no such a thing as you doing something, who cares? Every item, anything, action we do, when we breathe, when we whisper, when we sneeze, has repercussions in our universe, positive and God forbid the opposite. The bells showed us that every time the Kohen Gadol moved, ding-a-ling, even when like he turned a little to the right, turned a little to the left. Shabbat Shalom, Diane. It shows that everything, every bell, every ding has a consequence, positive or God forbid the opposite. And lastly, we know that in Torah, I'm going to finish with this point, is silence is golden. When God gave the Torah at Sinai, there was thunder, there was lightning, and then absolute silence that even the birds didn't chirp. The frogs did not croak. The donkeys did not bray. The entire world fell into silence when we got the Torah. And there's many more examples that silence is lauded in the Torah. So what's this business of 72 bells? If silence is so pivotal, the silent devotion, remember Shmona Esrei, everybody, Jane, Margaret, right? We say silently, we move our lips, but we don't. That's the other prayers, but silent devotion, you put your feet together and no one hears what you're saying. You whisper it very, very quietly. Silent. You move your lips, but you don't say the words out loud. Silent devotion is a part of our prayers, part of our demeanor. So many instances when silence is demanded of us, right? Yet here it seems like bells and whistles. Bells and whistles. So we see one time that the Kohen Gadol did not wear his bell garment was on Yom Kippur. When he went into the holies of holies, the bell garment came off. That is a time of silence. So there's much more to elaborate, but I'll give you the highlight of this point that the Kabbalah explains, Hasidus explains, that there's a time when silence is preferred. But how do you get to the point when you can be silent? Sometimes you need the ringing and the banging. You need the fanfare. You need the excitement. Like, I'll give you an example. You haven't seen your son an entire year. He was away in Africa on a safari internship, right? He's going to be a veterinarian. I'm using a drastic example. A year later, he shows up at JFK, and from a mile away, you say, David, David, and you run and you're screaming, David, you grew 10 inches. And you run and you hug. And when you embrace him, suddenly the screaming stops. You just hear silence. You hug your son and no more screaming. Why'd you stop screaming? Because screaming is symbolic of turmoil. Right? Sometimes screaming is symbolic of like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen my son in a year. Screaming is a sign of turmoil. But once you stop screaming, you end up silent. Once you reach, gotten out all the screams, then now you come to a place where you feel silence can express what you need to express, the hug, the silent moment. And that's what Jewish life is, the bells tell us. There's times for the ringing, and that's how we get excited. When we daven, you see people who are shaking and swaying, and and they're screaming the davening. And then suddenly, it's silent devotion. So the Torah is teaching us there's times with the bells and the whistles, because that's how we learn to express ourselves, and we get comfortable with what's inside. We let it all out, and then we can be silent. But you need times. Not all of us are the people that, if you looked at the Lubavitcher Rebbe davening, you never would see the Rebbe screaming the davening or shaking frantically. The Rebbe was almost so quiet because the Rebbe was already in a place up here. But the congregation, people need the swaying and the screaming of the songs and the singing because they're letting it all out. And then they come to a place of silence. And that's what the bells teach us. You need both. You need the ding-a-ling-a-ling, and then the time when the Kohen removes the bell shows us, and then there's the moment of silence. And you quietly express yourself. And that's why it says an empty kettle makes a lot of noise, right? An empty tzedakah box, one coin, when the tzedakah box is full, you don't know how many coins are in the charity box. It's full. One coin, bang, bang, bang. So we all start out with one coin, but then when we become comfortable in our skin and confident in who we are, you don't have to walk in and announce, I am the genius. I am the one. I am the one. I remember I was at a place, I was the guest speaker. They didn't announce me, they didn't say anything, so I went into the audience and I sat down. Finally, they're looking for me. She's the guest speaker. So they said, how come you're sitting in the audience? I said, why not? Till you need me, I could sit in the audience. I don't have to be up on front, on top of the stage. Here I am. My name is Freida. You don't have to. When you need to ring your bell, you'll ring your bell. You don't need to ring your bell always. You're happy, and if they wouldn't have called me up, I would have gone home. I wouldn't have minded. But sometimes that's what it is. Once you get, I'm not saying I'm Miss Great. I'm trying to say once you get comfortable in your own skin and you're confident in your relationship with God and your relationship with yourself, your tzedakah box is full. You don't hear the clinging, clanging sounds. You're content with your silence. You're content with your peacefulness in your life. But I'm still ringing my bells. And you come to my house, ladies, come right in. Don't worry. I won't hold it against you. But yeah, back.
Oh, right.
So I want to wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you.
And